Hey guys, Lee Sell here with Crawlspace Ace, and today we're going to talk about the big question. What does a crawlspace encapsulation cost? Now, this is a tough question because there are a lot of factors, just like everything. You ask any contractor what anything costs, he's going to tell you, well, it depends. And it's the same thing with an encapsulation. You got to take into account most encapsulations, especially out here in Western Kentucky, require a sump pump system because water intrusion is pretty common in crawl spaces. So a sump pump system is usually going to add somewhere between probably $3,000 and $5,000 into your encapsulation project. You got mold remediation. If there's any mold in your crawl space that needs to either spray mold killer or do a soda blast mold remediation, whatever you do, that's going to add cost to your encapsulation as well. I mean, that could be anywhere between $200 to $4,000 depending on how bad the mold is. You also got things like floor joist repair or floor support that might need to go up that can add to the cost of encapsulation, and things like add-ons with thicker liners and stuff like that. More square footage, less square footage is going to raise and lower that price. Higher, lower crawl spaces, all that's going to add to the cost of a crawl space encapsulation. But I would say for a normal 1,500 square foot crawl space, our encapsulations without including sump pump systems, mold remediation, any of the add-ons like that, they usually start about $8,000. So and it just goes up from there. I would say our encapsulations usually range probably somewhere between $7,000 and $25,000. It can just, with all those add-ons and issues, it can really skyrocket that price. But I would say my average crawl space encapsulation usually runs about $15,000. And that's usually includes a sump pump system, maybe some mold remediation or floor support, something like that. So that just gives you an idea of what to look for when looking at costs for encapsulation. Upgrades and add-ons that you can do with your encapsulation. So first thing is what liner should I use? I actually don't get asked this very often. I just kind of I usually just go with either a 12 or a 20 mil liner, and a lot of people don't know that there's many other choices that they can go with the liner. So we actually offer a 12 mil, a 20 mil, a 90 mil, and a 180 mil liner. So a 12 mil liner is our standard liner. That's what we use the most in our encapsulations. The next is going to be your 20 mil liner. It's just going to be a little thicker, so you don't have to worry as much about rips and tears in your liner. It's going to help seal that crawl space up a little better because it's a little thicker. It looks better because it just lays a little bit flatter. And to add that so all these are going to be going off of about a 1,500 square foot house. So if you were to add a 20 mil liner instead of the 12 mil liner, you'd be looking at roughly a $600 difference. So if we go up to a 90 mil liner, so the 90 mil, what it's going to be is it has a 10 mil liner that's actually attached to a reflective back, and that's going to give you a little bit of R value for insulation and stuff like that. So when we go up the walls and everything like that, it's going to give you a little bit of insulation factor in your crawl space, and that's going to be an additional $1,000 compared to just a 12 mil liner. And then lastly is our 180 mil liner, which is still that 10 mil woven liner that is attached to a double layer of closed foam insulation. And that's just going to add even more insulation into your crawl space. And that would be roughly additional $1,800 for a $1,500 square foot house. So the next upgrade or add-on we have is a battery backup system for your sump pump. So if you're in an area that gets a lot of power outages, or you have a lot of water that gets in all the time. We just did an encapsulation a month ago that the guy literally lived on a spring, and whether it was raining or a sunny day, that pump was turning on almost every 30 minutes. So he's just constantly getting water into his crawl space. So in systems like that, then a battery backup system would be a good idea. If your power runs out, or if that pump burns up, then it's got a second pump that will be tripped once that water gets to a higher level, and it'll turn on and still be able to pump that water out instead of having a problem. So if you wanted to add a battery backup system, you'd be looking at an additional $700. The next thing we need to look at is what kind of drainage system do we want to install with our sump pump. So when we install a sump pump system in a crawl space, especially for encapsulation, we don't just dig a hole in the ground and put the sump pump basin in there and get the pump set up and just call it good. We actually run a perimeter drain around the entirety of the crawl space. That way, no matter where that water is getting into the crawl space, it's hitting that drain and running straight to that sump pump. So there's a couple different options that we can use for that. And the first is going to be this hydro drain. So you got a lot of area in between for that water to seep into. It's surrounded by a geotextile fabric, so water can get in, but it's blocking that dirt and mud from getting in there and clogging it. So running a system like this, you'd be looking at about $20 a foot to install it. And then the next system we got is kind of your standard corrugated pipe with the perforations. So it's you got a little more area, area for this pipe, the water to get into the pipe and run down to your sump pump. So this is better for crawl spaces that are getting a lot of water into them, and it's going to be a more efficient, more easy flow for that water. But it does cost a little bit more because you have to dig a bigger trench to put this in, surround it with rock. That way it's not getting clogged up. We do put a geotextile fabric around it as well. But you're looking at $25 a foot to install this. The next service I wanted to talk about is mold remediation. So you may need mold remediation with your encapsulation. If you have any kind of mold in your crawl space, before we encapsulate it, we need to treat that mold one way or another, because the last thing you want to do is to seal up that crawl space and still have mold in your crawl space, because then you're just sealing that mold into your house. So if you don't have very much mold in your crawl space, if it's just very light, just starting out, then we can probably get away with just spraying a mold killer in there. It's a very cheap way to deal with the mold. We charge 25 cents a foot for that service, and it'll kill all the mold, but you'll still have, if there's any kind of staining on the floor joists or anything like that, it'll still be kind of, the floor joists and subfloor will still have that staining color, but all the mold will be dormant. It'll be killed. The next service we have, if you have any kind of really thick mold or wood rot, anything like that, I highly suggest using our Soda Blast mold remediation service. And what that is it's kind of like a sand blaster. It's high pressure air along with baking soda instead of sand. The baking soda is a lot less intrusive. It doesn't damage the wood when you're blasting it on there, but your high pressure air with that baking soda will blast that mold off of the floor joist, subfloor, anywhere that mold is on. And I mean, it's basically going to look like a brand new house under there. The wood looks brand new once we're done. And then we actually come in after we soda blast and spray that mold killer on everything as well. Just in case there's any mold spores that are either trying to reattach itself onto the wood or anywhere else, we spray that as well. And that'd be the best kind of mold remediation system we have. And lastly, we do have a system called lumber coat, and that is spraying a coating on the wood itself, and it actually comes with a manufactured 30-year warranty against mold and wood rot and anything like that. And if there's any moisture in the wood, it's going to pull that moisture out and prevent any moisture from reattaching to that wood, or any mold or wood rot from reattaching to that mold. And if there is wood rot on there, it'll protect that wood from getting any worse. It's not usually a service we add in with our encapsulations, because when you encapsulate your crawl space, you're sealing it off and putting a dehumidifier under there. So you should be preventing any moisture. You should be pulling that moisture out of the wood and preventing any mold and wood rot from encapsulating it anyway. But it is an option just in case. Another upgrade or add-on we offer is insulation for the crawl space. So options with that are you can insulate the rim joists, which is the main area where you got air transfer from the crawl space into the house. So that's gonna help make your house more efficient, and it's a good option for insulating your crawl space. The next one is a foam board insulation on the walls. Like I said earlier, it's if you don't have a tall crawl space, if your foundation blocks aren't coming high off of the ground on the outside, then it's not really a good option, because if you just have your blocks underground anyway, they're already insulated from the ground. So if you only have like a foot from the ground to where your sill plate is, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put foam board insulation around the foundation walls. The other options are to run a thicker liner with our 90 mil, 180 mil with the insulation that comes on that liner. That's a good insulation option. And then lastly is to put either bad insulation back up into the floor joists. That is not an option that we actually offer, but is an option that you can look into for yourself. If you do, I suggest putting a encapsulated bad insulation up, which is your normal bad insulation surrounded with plastic to keep the moisture from attaching to that insulation. The next add-on we have is either a wired or a Wi-Fi thermostat that hooks up to your dehumidifier. So the wired thermostat will actually hook up to your dehumidifier with wires that will run up to your house, and you'll have a little box inside your house there attached to one of the walls where you can adjust the humidity levels right there in your house and be able to see the humidity levels right there in your house for your crawl space. To add that system, you'd be looking at about an additional $200. So the next thing is there's a couple different Wi-Fi thermostats that we can add to your house for your dehumidifier. And the first would be this universal. It's a touchscreen Wi-Fi thermostat. And actually the unit itself, this face unit, the touchscreen, would be installed in the crawl space. Right there by the door. So if you wanted to mess with it, you can just open the door and it'd be right there by the door, and you can adjust the levels there. But it is also Wi-Fi, and it comes with a free app that you can download on your phone. And so you wouldn't even really need that to open the door unless you lost your phone for some reason. But you can pull up the app on your phone. You can adjust the levels of humidity and check the levels of humidity right there on your phone. It also has notifications if your humidity levels get too high or anything like that. It'll notify you by one of those push notifications and let you know you have an issue. It's a really good option. This system costs about $250 to install. And lastly, we have it's actually a whole home thermostat. So if you want a system that not only controls the level within your crawl space, but if you're looking at maybe replacing your thermostat within your home as well, then we can install this system, and it's actually you can control everything. You can control the thermostat with your HVAC system in your home, and also your dehumidifier in your crawl space. So it's your whole system all in one, and that'll be installed in the house, and it'll have your Wi-Fi app as well, so you can control that anywhere in your home, just like the other one, or anywhere in the world, just like the other one. For that system, you'd be looking at about $450 for that system. Those Wi-Fi thermostats are really good for anybody who's looking to get an encapsulation on like a vacation home, a second home, or you're just unable to get into your crawl space and actually check the humidity levels and make sure it's correct. You're actually able to be able to see that on your phone if you're in a different state or just in a different town, or just it's your rental property, what have you. That way you're actually able to keep track of that wherever you are. The other thing we can put in there is this little unit here, and it's just a little sensor that we can install anywhere in the crawl space. And what it'll do is it's just a sensor for humidity levels, temperature, and stuff like that. So it's not hooked up to the dehumidifier in any way, so you can't adjust the humidity levels in the dehumidifier or anything like that. But it will allow you to be able to keep track and be able to see what the humidity levels are in your crawl space. And it does have the push notifications as well in the app on your phone, so you can see what those levels are, and it'll let you know if you're in a dangerous level. Anything above 60% relative humidity is not a good level to be at. So you can set that to if it goes above 58% humidity, it'll trigger that alarm, and it'll send you a little push notification saying that you got issues down there. So for this little guy, it's about $75 to put this guy in. I want to thank you again for considering the Crawlspace Ace for your crawlspace encapsulation project. I hope now that you've seen this video, you have a better understanding of what a crawlspace encapsulation costs and what kind of add-ons and upgrades you can do. Now, if you'd still like to move forward, the next phase in this process would be for myself to come out and do a consultation where I take measurements and we decide what kind of services would be required for your encapsulation. I would ask, though, when I come out for the consultation, that if there are multiple people involved in this buying process, that everybody who's involved is there at the consultation. That way everybody has a chance to ask me questions, and it just makes the whole process a lot smoother if everyone involved is present. Now, if you guys decide that you would like to use us for your project, the next thing we would have to do is sign a contract, and I would take a 50% down payment that would put you on the schedule. The other 50% would be due when the day the job is completed. Now, if you need to take some more time to think about it, I have no problem with that. Take all the time you need. But if for any reason you decide that you do not want to use us for your project, I hope you feel comfortable being able to tell me that we are not a good fit for you. Thank you.